There are villains in Greek mythology who are easy to understand. Monsters who destroy because destruction is their nature. Gods who punish because their pride demands it. Creatures of pure darkness who exist only to cause harm. Medea is not one of them. This is the story of a woman who was brilliant beyond measure, powerful beyond anything most mortals ever achieved, and loyal with a completeness that most people never experience. A woman who gave up everything, her home, her family, her country, her future, for a man who did not deserve her. And a woman who, when that man betrayed her in the most complete way possible, did something so terrible that her name has been spoken with horror and fascination for 3,000 years. To understand what Medea did, you have to understand what she gave up first. Medea was the daughter of Aeetes, the king of Colchis, a kingdom at the far eastern edge of the known world, beyond the Black Sea, a place so remote that most Greeks considered it practically the edge of existence itself. She was no ordinary princess. She was a priestess of Hecate, the goddess of magic and the crossroads, and she had inherited gifts that went far beyond royal blood. She could brew potions that healed the most devastating wounds. She could call on forces that most mortals could not even perceive. She could see things others could not see, and understand things others could not understand. She was, in the ancient understanding of the world, a witch, and one of the most powerful who had ever lived. When Jason arrived in Colchis with his Argonauts, seeking the Golden Fleece that hung in her father's sacred grove, Medea saw him and fell in love immediately and completely. The goddess Aphrodite, working at the request of other gods who wanted Jason to succeed, had arranged it. But whatever divine interference had started the feeling, what Medea experienced was real and total. She looked at this Greek hero who had sailed to the very end of the world and felt something she had never felt before in all her years of study and power and isolation at the edge of the known world. And then she made a choice that changed everything. Her father Aeetes had no intention of giving up the Golden Fleece. He was a king of great power and deep cunning, a man who had kept the fleece safe for years and had no intention of surrendering it to a Greek adventurer who had simply sailed up to his shores and asked for it. He set Jason a series of impossible tasks designed not to test him but to kill him. He had to yoke 2 fire-breathing bronze bulls, creatures of divine construction that had scorched every man who had ever approached them, and plow an entire field with them in a single day. He had to sow the field with dragon's teeth that would sprout instantly into armed soldiers he would then have to defeat alone. And finally, he had to get past the sleepless dragon that coiled around the sacred grove where the Golden Fleece hung, a creature that had never once closed its eyes in all of eternity. Medea helped him. She spent a night brewing a magical ointment from herbs gathered under the moon, an ointment that made his skin impervious to fire and blade for a single day. She told him the secret to defeating the soldiers that would rise from the dragon's teeth. Throw a stone among them and they would turn on each other in confusion. She walked with him to the sacred grove and used her deepest magic to sing the guardian dragon to sleep, its ancient eyes finally closing for the first and only time. Without Medea, Jason would have died in Colchis before he ever touched the Golden Fleece. Without her potions, the bulls would have burned him alive. Without her knowledge, the soldiers would have cut him down. Without her song, the dragon would never have slept. Without Medea, there would have been no quest, no glory, no story at all. Jason did not win the Golden Fleece. Medea gave it to him. But helping Jason was not enough. She knew her father would pursue them the moment he discovered what had happened. So, she did something that no amount of love should have been able to justify, something that haunted her for the rest of her life, and that she could never fully explain even to herself. She took her younger brother Absyrtus and brought him with them as they fled into the night. And when her father's ships began to gain on them across the dark water, she killed her own brother and scattered his body parts into the sea, knowing that her father would be forced to stop and collect them for proper burial rather than continue the chase. She murdered her own brother to save a man she had known for days. The weight of that act never left her. She arrived in Greece as Jason's wife, carrying a guilt that no magic could dissolve, a foreigner in a land that regarded her with suspicion and barely concealed fear. She had left behind everything she had ever known. She had betrayed her father, her kingdom, her brother, and her own sense of who she was. She had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. All of it for Jason, and Jason, for a time, was worthy of it. They settled in Iolcos and built a life together. They had 2 sons. Medea used her extraordinary gifts to help Jason further. She rejuvenated his aged father Aeson, restoring him to youth through a ritual of such complexity and power that even the gods took notice. She dealt with his enemies through the careful and devastating application of her knowledge. She was not merely his wife, but his greatest advantage, his most powerful ally, the invisible force that made everything he touched turn to success. She had given him everything, and he had taken all of it. And then Jason decided he wanted to marry someone else. The Princess Glauce of Corinth was younger, and her father Creon was a king who could offer Jason the political legitimacy and social standing that his foreign wife, this strange woman from the edge of the world with her herbs and her magic and her unsettling eyes, could never provide. The calculation was cold and entirely without feeling. Medea had served her purpose. A better opportunity had presented itself. Jason told her he was marrying Glauce, and she should be grateful for everything he had given her. The chance to live in the civilized world of Greece, as if everything she had sacrificed for him was a gift he had bestowed, rather than a debt he owed her for the rest of his life. Medea listened to every word, and something inside her that had held everything together through years of exile and suspicion and loss simply broke apart completely. What she felt in that moment was not ordinary anger or ordinary grief. It was the rage of someone who had given everything: her home, her family, her brother's life, her entire identity and future, for a single person, and discovered that the person considered her disposable the moment something more convenient appeared. It was the fury of someone who had crossed every line there was to cross in the name of love, and found that love, in the end, meant nothing to the one she had loved. She sent a gift to Glauce, a beautiful robe and a golden crown, crafted with care and soaked in poison so precisely prepared that nothing in the world could stop it once it touched skin. Glauce put them on and died in agony. Her father, Creon, rushing to help her, touched the robe and died too. And then Medea did the thing that has made her name unforgettable and unbearable in equal measure for 3,000 years. She killed her children, her own sons, the children she had carried and raised and loved. She killed them not in madness, not without understanding what she was doing, but with full and terrible awareness, because they were Jason's children too, and because in the ancient world, the worst thing you could do to a man was to destroy his legacy, his future, everything that would carry his name forward after he was gone. She took from him the one thing he could never get back. And then she fled on a chariot sent by her grandfather Helios, the sun god himself, rising into the sky above the burning city while Jason stood below and screamed her name into the air. The ancient world did not know what to do with Medea. She was monstrous. What she had done was beyond what most people could comprehend, let alone forgive. And yet the story refused to let her be simply a monster, because the logic of her destruction was so devastatingly clear. She had given everything. She had been betrayed completely. She had been left with nothing. She was not innocent. She had committed acts that nothing could justify, but she was also the inevitable result of what had been done to her. A woman of extraordinary power who had been used as a tool, valued only for what she could provide, and discarded the moment she was no longer convenient. Jason died alone years later, struck on the head by a rotting piece of timber that fell from the hull of the Argo, the ship that had carried him to his greatest glory, the vessel he had never maintained, left to decay while he chased a future built on someone else's sacrifice. Some say that was Medea's final revenge. Others say it was simply justice, arriving at last. Either way, Jason should have known better. He always should have known better.